At 1:09:02 on December 15, 1939, Simo Häyhä lay motionless in a shallow trench carved into the frozen earth near the Kollaa River in Finland. The air was a brutal -40 degrees, cold enough to freeze oil and jam the action of most modern rifles. 33 years old, a former farmer and elite hunter, Simo was staring through the iron sights of his Finnish M2830 rifle. Ahead of him, the ground began to shake as a massive Soviet T-26 tank rumbled through the snow-covered trees, its turret rotating toward the thin Finnish defensive line. Simo didn't have an anti-tank cannon or a heavy artillery battery backing him up. Instead, he had his modified bolt-action rifle and a box of specialized high-velocity rounds he had prepared himself. 3 weeks earlier, his squadron mates had looked at his equipment with confusion. They carried modern rifles with telescopic scopes, believing that technology was the only way to win a war of this scale. They saw Simo removing the optical sights from his rifle, calling it an obsolete way to fight. But Simo knew better. To him, a scope was a liability in the sub-zero Finnish winter. The glass would fog up, and the reflection of the sun on the lens would act as a beacon for Soviet snipers. He modified his rifle to sit lower, allowing him to keep his head flush with the snow, making him nearly invisible. He even stuffed snow into his mouth to hide the steam of his breath. His commanding officers called his tactics primitive. The other snipers called it a death wish. Simo's answer was always the same. If he wanted to kill a tank, he needed to be a ghost first. The arithmetic was simple. One man with a 5-round rifle against an armored steel beast. The decision was not. As the tank approached 300 yards, Simo didn't aim for the thick frontal armor. He aimed for the tiny observation slit where the Soviet driver was peering out. He had modified his ammunition, choosing specific heavy-grain bullets that could punch through glass and thin metal at high speed. At exactly 09:05, he squeezed the trigger. The driver was hit instantly. The tank veered sharply to the left, crashing into a frozen ravine. Before the crew could escape, Simo fired 2 more rounds into the fuel port he had identified as a weak spot. The tank killer had claimed his first armored victim without using a single explosive. The Soviet wolves were hunting in packs. By mid-December, the Red Army had realized that their tanks were being picked off by an invisible force. They sent specialized hunting parties to find the man they began to call outsmart, the White Death. They used heavy artillery to level entire sections of the forest, hoping to catch him in the blast. They even brought in their own master snipers, men with hundreds of combat hours and the best telescopic sights Moscow could provide. But Simo fit the environment perfectly. He spent his spare hours testing the density of the snow, experimenting with different camouflage patterns, and refining the action of his rifle to ensure it never jammed in the cold. Those gadgets and adjustments saved his life every single day. If you want to see how Simo's decision to ditch modern tech turned him into the deadliest sniper in history, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories from the archives. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Simo. Simo checked his ammunition. He was down to his last few rounds of the high-velocity load. The Soviet formation was reforming for a massive push. At 11:14, 3 more tanks emerged from the mist. Simo didn't panic. He moved to a new position he had prepared 200 yards to the east. He had poured water over the snow in front of his muzzle, freezing it into a hard sheet of ice. This was another one of his engineering gadgets. Normally, the blast from a rifle would kick up a cloud of snow, giving away the sniper's position. But the ice kept the snow still. Simo opened fire. 1 bullet for the commander peering out of the hatch. Another for the radiator. The 3rd tank stopped, its crew terrified to move. For 45 minutes, Simo held back an entire armored column alone. His tactical awareness was absolute. He tracked the movement of the infantry, the rotation of the tank turrets, and the shifting wind. By the time the sun began to set at 15:30, Simo had confirmed 21 kills that afternoon. Not just soldiers, but the very machines that were supposed to crush the Finnish resistance. The 100-day war was reaching its peak, and the White Death was only getting started. But on March 6, 1940, the war finally caught up with him. During a frantic engagement, a Soviet soldier fired an explosive bullet that struck Simo in the lower left jaw. The impact was catastrophic. His face disintegrated. He fell into the snow, bleeding out as the Soviets moved in to claim their prize. His fellow soldiers fought a desperate battle to recover him, dragging his body back through the frozen woods while he drifted into a coma. They thought he was dead. The news reached the capital that the White Death had finally fallen. He woke up in a hospital on March 13th, the day the peace treaty was signed. He had survived, but his face was a map of the war he had fought. He had taken over 500 lives in just 100 days, a record that remains unbroken to this day. He was promoted to second lieutenant immediately, the fastest promotion in the history of the Finnish military. But that night, Simo sat in his hospital bed, his modified rifle now a relic of the past, knowing that the Kabad gun everyone laughed at had saved his country. The war ended, but Simo stayed in the mountains. He returned to his farm, living a quiet life as a hunter and dog breeder. He rarely spoke of the war, but when he did, he always credited his survival to his modifications: the iron sights, the ice-packed snow, and the refusal to rely on technology that could fail. He lived to be 96 years old, a man who proved that a farmer with a modified rifle could stop an entire army of steel. Simo Häyhä died on April 1, 2002. He was buried with full military honors. His story remains a testament to the mindset of David Schilling and Mad Jack, men who saw a weapon not as it was, but as it could be. They attacked impossible odds, modified their tools, and became the legends that history can never forget. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories every day. Stories about the tank killer snipers and the pilots who modified their way to victory. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, Finland, United Kingdom, or Pakistan? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer, you're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served as a sharpshooter. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Simo Häyhä doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.